Bem, vamos então começar a última short talk que temos agendado no nosso programa online. Hoje a conversa tem um contorno muito particular. É uma conversa com o Ferreira e com o Pedro Teixeira. É uma conversa que está associado, obviamente, à programação da nossa exposição Give Me Truth, Cumplicities, que está patente na Casa das Artes, mas esta conversa tem um tom um bocadinho diferente das anteriores, porque é uma conversa que não só incide sobre a matéria da exposição e dos elementos que estão expostos, neste caso, na estação do Hugo Ferreira e do Nuno Souza, que está associado no fundo, à noção ou à estação do tempo, apesar de ser uma extensão, estava a dizer, dessa estação, tem no fundo uma entrada muito particular. Tem a ver com uma das aventuras do Hugo e do Pedro na fundação de um estúdio, que é o estúdio OK Draw, que tem a ver com uma visualização tridimensional da arquitetura. Visualização digital 3D da arquitetura. Esta sessão nós decidimos fazê-la em inglês e vou passar dentro de momentos para inglês, dado no fundo pelo facto deste escritório, desta aventura do Pedro e do Hugo, está muito alicerçada no fundo em aventuras internacionais, em escritórios estrangeiros. Decidimos fazer esta conversa em inglês. So I would start this short talk, first of all, greeting Pedro and Hugo for their kindness of being here with us today to speak about their work about their very special enterprise, about the OK Draw studio. I would also like to greet everybody that is present with us here in our Zoom session and also on our YouTube streaming. On our YouTube streaming. I would just like to do a small presentation of Hugo and Pedro, although I will really just stress 2 or 3 things, which information which you can even find on their site. So the first thing for us, creators of Give Me Truth, Cumplicities, this notion of crossover. For us, what's important here is, first of all, that Hugo Ferreira is an architect. He's a master in architecture by the Faculty of Architecture of Oporto. And Pedro Teixeira is a designer that is specialized in 3D rendering and this kind of programs. What can we say about this OK Draw adventure? Well, it's a high-end architectural visualization studio that is based in Portugal. It was created was formed in 2013. Beyond this search for realistic simulation, OK Draw's specificity on doing these kind of images or renderings has to do with the way they search. They try to tread through atmospheres that can mirror an episode of a certain architectural story. And this for us is very interesting because we are going to speak about, Pedro and Hugo are going to speak about 3D rendering, a very specific technique, but as a technique that what I could understand by the different conversations we had, all of us, that is very informed by the fact that Hugo is an architect and Pedro is a designer. So it's this crossover between the two entries or the two different concerns of how to see 3D rendering that gives this enterprise a very specific intake. I would like once again to thank, I could just say that the OK Draw work is set on a collaborative relationship with the clients. And this is very important so that they can translate the final intention for each architecture office and real estate company. So this idea that the images, although they have this authorial intake on the images, it is very important that the client also identify themselves with the work they are doing. So it's this in-between reading of the client's concerns, but also this very personal and the technical intake on how to pursue an idea of another, but with your own expression. Thank you, Hugo and Pedro. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elder. First of all, we would like to thank for this opportunity. We'd like to thank to FOetics, to Elder, to Sylvia, for being here to give us the chance to give this small presentation of our work, of our craft, and also for the opportunity to be represented in the exhibition Give Me Truth. It's also a pleasure and an honor to be among these young and talented artists. We hope this presentation make sense for you. We hope we can explain a little bit of what we do, about what we see in architectural visualization, and we hope also we don't get too bored with technical stuff. We are now sharing our screen. We'll start this presentation. This presentation, we thought that could be interesting to divide this presentation for you in 3 parts. So we don't spend too much time talking about technical things because we also find that technical things are not the most important issue about what we do, since we believe that what we see is more important than the technical software of what the technical software that we use. So we divided this presentation in 3 parts. First, we'll talk a little bit about our studio, about ourselves, about our team, where we operate. Then we will talk about our process, somehow to translate our ideas, our vision on architectural visualization, and then a little bit of our work. As Elder was saying, my name is Hugo. This is Pedro. We started in 2013 with this adventure, as Elder was saying, of making 3D images. And we found also interesting that the fact that we are architect and product designer really can balance this idea of making images. So now Pedro will start this studio presentation.
Desculpa, Hugo e Pedro, não se está a ouvir. Há pouco ouvia-se o Hugo perfeitamente, agora quando mudaram é que não se está a ouvir. Ok, agora estamos a ouvir.
So as you and the elder mentioned before, we first project.
Pedro, there's some problem with your microphone because we hearing you on and off. Hugo is okay, but you have some technical issues there.
And these things happened. We tried everything, we checked everything.
The moment you said that the technical was not important, immediately there was a problem with the technical. You said it was
Okay.
not important.
Sometimes the technical is important. Are you listening now?
Yes, yes.
Is that okay?
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
Can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
So, as Hugo and Elder mentioned before, we started back in 2013, and we started to work locally. And on the first project that we had the opportunity to collaborate together, me and Hugo, me as a designer and Hugo as an architect, realized that it worked together and maybe we could make it more serious. So we started to together, and we eventually started to make. It started to take another proportions. Started that maybe and came the time that we moved. We needed started to make the operation of an idea along with the M Solo. We divided the space with him, signed together to create shared and could be a creative space for both.
Pedro, I'm sorry, but you're rapping. You're not doing a conference, you're rapping, because we hear 3-4 words and then they disappear, and then another 3 or 4 words. You're more rapping than actually giving a talk.
Okay.
So there's some technical.
So
you start very well, but then after a certain moment, we start to listen to a very like a cut off words.
Okay, so let's try like this.
Now it seems okay.
Okay, maybe it was a little
some
option
interference.
So we started to create this idea of an office that could have both teams working together, and we create this space that would have freedom, artistic freedom for us to place, some of the references or some of the work on the wall, and that we could be working with a free schedule, so that we didn't have any sort of limitations to when we wanted to work or how we wanted to work. We never really had the idea of the intention of being a big corporate firm. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that we see ourselves more as a small team of craftsmanship, with handmade and a very tailored work for each specific client, and therefore we understand that maybe it's better if we are a small team where everyone is focused on a specific task, and every picture gets the deserved amount of detail and amount of time to work with. Right now, we are a team of 4, so there's 2 architects and 2 product designers. So it's me and Gonçalo Alves as a product designer, and Hugo and Catarina Brits as architects. And we find that these 2 areas together, the architects and the designers, works really well, because there's a mixture of references and stuff that we think it's important for the images that come together and create a very specific work that is not just architectural. So we think that benefits the images to a very great point. And we can now maybe show you a little bit of our workspace in a small video. Sorry. And So we think that this mixture of different areas with different interests, with different personalities and different references really comes together in our work, and we like to believe that the effort and the importance that we give to it really shines through the final result. So this result is also shown through the process of our work, which Hugo will now talk a little bit more about it.
To talk a little about the process of making an image, we, as I mentioned before, we found that technical software are not the most important things when we are making images. For us, we like to think that what we do is a little bit more than that, so we can help the architects or the promoters to visualize, but also to communicate their ideas. And to communicate their ideas, these visual ideas, we have to start with somehow with beginnings, or because since every time architects have this necessity to represent their projects, sometimes through drawings, through paintings, through watercolors, but we like to think that what we do probably is more digital. Probably technology has somehow evolved, and we do it more realistic and more faster. But we like to believe that the basics of drawing and the basics of watercolor, of composition, of communicating an idea is the most important thing. So in this sense, we found during these years making images, we found that the necessity to pursue other things, other visual elements besides architecture, that really can help could help us to communicate, to somehow create an emotion between the viewer and between architecture. Because we believe that the best way to represent a project or an idea of a project of architecture is if you can somehow connect between the viewer and the architecture piece through probably through an emotion or through a story. So we like to look for references. The most part of our work started always with the pursuit of references for each project, and we like to pursue references on movies, on architecture, photography, and also on abstract photography. Of course, there are other arts that we are always interested, and the fact that we are designers and architects, we can discuss always different ideas about this kind of references. Let's talk a little bit about cinema. What cinema how cinema help us to pursue this idea of ours to make images. We found that cinema as this really simple, sort of say, way of representing in one shot, on a simple shot, a strong and a simple idea. And a simple idea can be represented through color, through the difference between colors, through a chaotic space, a chaotic city, an empty city, emptiness, or the cold, or even the interior spaces. We found that this idea of pursuing things that people are related with is a more effective way of representing also architecture. And in architecture photography, probably we pursue something related with the shots, with the framing, with this idea of in one frame to represent shapes and also to represent context of architecture and the surroundings of architecture. How vegetation, how materials of architecture can communicate with the shapes of blue, the shapes of the sand, the shapes of vegetation itself. We also have this kind of obsession with detail. We like to understand how materials work, how materials get hold, how materials are appropriated by people, and also how vegetation and natural elements work in confront with architecture. But always having this big idea of the end result, and now on how can we represent architecture in a simple but on an effective way. To talk about abstract photography, what we pursue in this is the really nice and simple way how shapes can be so beautiful, and sometimes you don't say, it seems that you don't say nothing, but the images are super strong at the same time, and super emotional at the same time. And even the stories that the photographers can really tell on one realistic shot. What we are seeing now is our panel in Casa das Artes, that is represented in Casa das Artes. We collected 5 images to be represented in this panel, and what we have tried to represent here, it's a little bit of the process, a little bit of how somehow these references that I've spoke before inform the process of making an image of. And when I say making an image, we should see that from the right to the left, that somehow the images are getting some different shapes and some different colors, some different aspects of analysis that I'm about to explain a little bit. So starting by this first column, what we pursue here is mostly the main concept, the main framing of architecture, as I told you before on architecture photography, if it's a frontal camera, if it's a 45 degrees camera, but how can we represent architecture on the best way? Then the understanding of the shapes, understanding how shapes of the architecture communicate through the images. And on the third column here, you are seeing how light corresponds, how light responds in conflict with the architecture. Because we always have to study light, since it's the most it's the most important three-dimensional element to give shape to architecture. Then we have here, what we are seeing here is a raw draft of materials, and we need to verify if we have an harmony between colors and between all the texturing and mapping of the images. And somehow this fourth column represents this obsession with the amount of elements, the amount of non-repetitive elements that we have on an image. Since since we analyze the real life, we don't have we have repetition, but it's a false repetition. You have to have a difference between elements so it can be more realistic as possible. And here, what we see is is more a technical thing. We do everything in 3D. We don't use Photoshop to photo merge images. We like to have the control of light, the control of the composition of vegetation, of the characters that we are telling in our story. So everything you see here in gray is it's the representation of the 3D elements done on the 3D software. And here is the final result that we hope, always hope that the main ideas that we had in the beginning could be translated on the final result. And these images, of course, are we are seeing here like a process of making an image, but the next part of our presentation will dig a little bit more on this idea of making an image that also relates with the pursuit of references on art and on cinema and in photography. We'll now present you two works that we also did last year that were also mentioned on the previous slide. We'll start with this.
So this is project 188. It was a project that was mentioned in the last F Poetics Live. It's a project by Nuno Malsosa. And when we started the project, he actually, this was a project that had a building that was started to being built. And there was this idea of expanding with other buildings to create a rural tourism in this area. And the other buildings were a restaurant and a coffee bar and some sort of bungalows that were a little bit out of the conventional idea that we have of a bungalow. And the whole idea behind this project is it wasn't supposed to be conventional. It wasn't supposed to be as direct as you think of a bungalow, of an idea of a bungalow. And the terrain was also a reflection of that. You can see here that we had 2 different days. We went to the terrain to photograph the terrain, and in 2 different days we had puddles with mud, and we had this view completely blocked by the mist and the fog, and we couldn't see the river and the other side of the hills. And on a sunny day, it was warm and it was green. It was welcoming with a beautiful sight. So there was these 2 conflict ideas, these very distinct ideas of the same site. And when we received the references from the architecture and we gathered some of our own to discuss along with the architecture, we found ourselves in the middle of a lot of different references that sort of seemed to conflict with one another. For example, we had this idea of a cold and foggy kind of loneliness space, but at the same time we had these references of a storm, warm sunny day with green, violets, and different colors that was very welcoming. There was also this idea of having the architecture as ruins that were there for a long time and that they became a part of nature, and nature took control of it as they were one only object. And since this was a rural site, we wanted to maintain as it was, and we didn't want to lie about it, and that was the whole idea of the architecture as well. And we also have this idea of playing with lights, with artificial lights and natural light, to create different moods, maybe some evening and daylight scenes. Even the paths were very different. These references that we have from the architecture, for paths, we had these 2 different ones. One that was more natural, like someone has passed here over and over again until the green started to disappear. And this one that it's really like man-made with concrete. There was also this idea that we could explore a more artistic and abstract approach, creating an homage to the artist, photographer Richard Moose, with the works he done for Infra and for Enclave. These were shots taken in Congo, and they were taken with a very specific film roll that created these beautiful colors. So there was this idea that maybe we could do something about it. And also the idea of neons. Somehow neons came together in this bunch of references, and we were not sure how they would fit in. And also the idea of the interior that somehow could be also in dialogue with the exterior, and that could be warm and cozy, but at the same time kind of futuristic and with cold materials like the concrete and the glass and the mirrors. So there was all these references, and we were not sure how they would work out together in the end. To start the project, we had these main buildings that we needed to communicate. So we divided this by creating type 1 bungalow, type 2 bungalow, the restaurant and the coffee bar, and one aerial view to make a conclusion of the whole project. This was a very big site with very distinct buildings, and we didn't have a lot of images to communicate the project, so we needed to be very specific about it. And we tried different things like different formats of images. We started with the horizontal ones, then became square ones, and after a while they got back to horizontal ones again, and then to square ones again. Same thing here. And the same thing for the light, where we could start with a very daylight type of image. We started to going towards sunny or sunset, and we could end up with a morning kind of dusky light. The perspectives, we also try to explore a little bit of that. For example, on this image, it was, we did have alternatives, but it was mostly this kind of shot. But for this one, we tried one from the road on the other side of the hill, sort of below the three buildings. Then we moved to below one of the buildings, seeing the other two. Then we adjust the composition, and we also play with the light. You know, you had a little bit more ambient light, a little bit less ambient light, and the same thing here, where we had a direct shot for the restaurant with a highlight of the sun hitting the architecture. And then we try to play with the architecture being like a silhouette, where you can really read very well what the architecture was, and that was kind of
Shadow.
yeah, a shadow figure in the middle of the greenery of the site. So we tried to play with that until we eventually stuck on some of these ideas, and we understood that, okay, this is the way to go, and we should now start to detailing these kind of images. And we started to do, along with the architecture, some of these kid-like drawings on top of it, where we say maybe the door is open instead of closed. Maybe there's some animals over here. The architecture said maybe we could, you know, play with these as we are arranging the architecture, and maybe if there's some greenery over here, we could try the neons over here, over there. And the same thing for these images. For example, there was this idea that the path was too wide, so we needed to narrow it down, and then it moved to the natural path that we saw in some of the references before. This idea that maybe some concrete building could peak a little bit more over here, and you can see those changes going through different phases. Also the tractor from the reference that we saw before, we had this idea of placing it, and the image is never really closed or defined. It's stabilized, but we are always working on top of it and trying to understand that maybe there's a background over there. Maybe there's some technical details on the architecture that we need to do, like this division over here, or maybe the grass isn't touching the path really well and we need to work on it. There's all this kind of stuff, you know, maybe there's a tree over here, maybe there's more light over there. The neon shouldn't have this design, should have another design. Maybe play a little bit better with the vegetation until we eventually get close to the deadline, and we have a very stabilized and very worked on image. And this is the final result that we came up with. And as you can see, all the references are pretty much there. You know, you have the neon, that is placed on these images, and you have the foggy and misty ambient, but also the sunny one, and you have the natural paths and the concrete paths, and the tractor that we saw before. And we also did a version with an infrared type of look, like the Richard Muse work. And we had to study and understand how the infrared photography works, how it converts the colors, what is happening behind the scenes, so we could emulate that, how we could emulate that. And it was a very challenging process that we really like to work on it. And we really think that they came very well together and it worked really, really well. And all of the references we think are pretty much present on the final result.
So the next project, 193, it's a different project, different place also. The previous project was made in Portugal. Here this client is from Netherlands, and the special thing about this project was when we started to work on this project, there was not really a project. With the client presented us some a briefing of some ideas of a building that didn't have a specific place to be, and the program of the building was an emerge experience for the customer on global warming things, like a museum concerning the global warming dangers. So they had these ideas of water, of materials, of empty space, but not really a project. So we interpreted that with as a challenge for us, since usually the architecture come to us with a most specific idea, and for the moment the client just had a sketch. But then we started to work with a 3D model with some shapes, and during this process they were evolving the project, and we were defining architecture alongside with the architects. So our first step here was a little bit different. We tried to put the building in different contexts because the main idea here was to communicate, to sell a building, was to sell an idea for their clients. So we experimented different cameras, different feelings and different emotions of a building on different places, among the trees, among a big city, among an empty space. As we can see here, we did this very quick sketches, and we placed some references with references of moods, of movies, of art, of architecture, of other buildings that really can help us and also help the client to make decisions on the best way to represent their project. And these were also an interior concepts ideas that we made for them, since the only space that they have at this moment was the entrance and the main atrium. So we experiment in different things of live performance going on, of surreal elements going on inside of the building. So in the end, the client chose this idea of the iceberg somehow floating inside of the building, and this idea of the building be placed in the kind of a park. So with these two shots, we did some quick tests. Like Pedro mentioned before, we like to try different lights and different moods, but and also to continue to pursue different references, somehow updating our references. sort of say. So we continue to place some other to pursue other buildings among nature, and how nature contacts between architecture and grass and trees and stuff like that, and how can we adjust the right light for the building, because our client had the necessity of the building to feel alive somehow. We didn't know how to do it, but we pursue this idea on different tests. So this process is something similar as Pedro on the project that Pedro explained. The image is never closed. This is a back and forth process where we experiment things, where we sketch things on the image, and things, if we don't panic too much, things will get somehow to appear and start to come alive. And this is a process where we are developing the image, and we are sending images to the client, and we are discussing these ideas to the client, and somehow they are telling, they are giving their feedback on the images, and also of course on the project, and if they feel if the project is being well communicated. So the same thing here for the interior image. And these are the same shots that I explained before, where we see here somehow this obsession with the details and the elements to make as more realistic as possible. And these were the final results. So what we found here interesting to show to you is not all about is not about the projects itself, is not about the architecture, but the process of making an image, our process. We believe that there is no right or wrong. This is our way of doing things. Probably when we started with, we had a different kind of process. For now, we like to be, or to evolve this process, but in the future we don't know. We found this to be the way that is really working for us. This pursuit between architecture, between art, between references, and so we can not just making a 3D, but to tell a story of architecture on some certain moment that can be an emotional path, sort of say, so the viewer, the final viewer, can really relates with the image and really relates with architecture, and have this idea, this feeling about the building itself and about the interior space.
We also find that when you are working in an artistic area, being photography or cinema or any other art related area, there's never really a direct formula to get the result. There's a lot of experimentation involved. There's references and crossing references and experimenting. Sometimes it goes wrong and you have to go back and start from zero and look at the references again, or search for other references and try again until you really eat something solid and you think that you are surprised that it's working, and you start to explore that path, and eventually you come up to a good result. And that's part of the main process that we try to explore.
Yep. And
yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Should we now stop the sharing?
Thank you, Hugo and Pedro. We enjoyed it very much. We enjoyed very much your
I don't know if
your
it was
intake.
too fast. It was too fast. I don't know. It was okay for you?
No, it was perfect. Don't worry. Don't
Okay.
worry. It's very interesting. It was very interesting the way you explained your in reality your work process. In reality, we understand it is a design process. It's not only a work process; it's a design process. Instead of doing some comments like I normally do, I would prefer today to open the floor for some questions or some issues anybody wants to place to Hugo and Pedro, because I think this is a very specific theme, and I'm sure maybe people have some some doubts or some things they would like to share with us. No, somebody want to? I think Sylvia is doing the technical side to it, allowing people to have the mic so they can speak.
Everyone
No,
is shy.
nobody has a thought they want to share. Now, what I could ask is, I understand that it's very interesting how you showed two different projects, where in reality the commission was a little bit different. One, there was a precise, like Pedro explained, was a precise vision of an architecture. There was a precise forms, there was a plan, sections, etc., etc. The second was a commission that was more open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
There was a commission where the design was being almost developed parallel to what you were doing. Let's see if I understood it well.
Exactly.
So, understanding that by these two examples, that your commissions vary a lot in nature. They are not all the same. It's not about somebody coming and just say, just do these two renders. It's more complex or more diverse than that. For me, the question would be, when the client comes with a commission, be the design completely closed, boxed in, or be it a design that is still being developed, the freedom to choose the different views on the building, is it something that you fight for? It is something that you want the client's intake, and you pursue the client's intake. Probably the answer is going to vary commission to commission, but the way you explained your working process, I'll really call it the design process, it seems like you need some space to work. It seems like in reality, maybe I don't know, I have the feeling that maybe the images that at the end, Pedro and you feel really satisfied are the ones almost like us as architects with the client, where the client understands our role of designing and gives us enough freedom to interpret the commission they are giving. I don't know if it is the same, or the best way to go is really for the client to guide you, and you inside these guidelines you conquer your freedom, or it is really about you want is the freedom and you must go around the different intakes to get your way.
Yeah, I think it's we like to we always pursue this idea of what we do is not just simple, as you were saying, Elder, not just simple make this rendered. I want an image of this part, an image of that part. We like to understand, or we like to believe that each project and each architecture building has a specific approach. And in this specific approach, we have these different areas. We have the engineers, we have the architect, and then if you have the need of somehow to represent your project, you have the 3D guys. Somehow some clients give their names, and when you contract the 3D guys, I believe you have to trust on their vision, and that's the place that we like to put ourselves in. So sometimes the client, yes, they have a specific idea of an image, and but even if they have the specific idea of an image, what we always do is we walk through the building. So we take the 3D model, or we make the 3D model. the first camera that we do, or the first 2 cameras that we do, is the ones that the client asked us for us to do. But then we do 20 more options, and after making these 20 or 30 more options, and most part of the times our views, I think, are more interesting than what the client wants, we suggest that we have a meeting with the client, and when we suggest, look, you asked us for making these to make 2 images for your project. We feel that your project is this and that and etc. So we think that the best way to represent these main concepts of your project are this camera and this camera and this camera. And when we have this kind of freedom and this kind of trust from the client on our work, we feel that we work better, of course, because we have the ideas to pursue, and not just be an extension of another hand of the client, because we feel that in the end somehow the images don't get the same result, and sometimes the client are not so satisfied, and it doesn't really understand why. And we always believe that if the client are too much of constrained, saying, I want this perspective, I want this light, I want this person here and that tree there, is not the commonplace for us, and is not the place that we want to be. So, but to be really honest, it's a struggle for us to make this, because it's, of course, it's the same. I will not compare that to architecture, of course, but it's almost the same. It's almost the people when are looking through to a plan of architecture, they always like to comment, oh, maybe you should put a window here, and with a window, or with a bigger window, I could have more light, I could have more view, etc. And as an architect, you should say, okay, yeah, but this window is the right window for your project. So everyone always have something to say, and it's also a struggle for us, because even for architects or designers, they like to comment this up, but this should be working better. So what we do, what we try to do, is convince the client that our idea is not to say that it's our idea, but is that we believe it's the better idea for their project.
And also there's this balance between not having enough ideas of how we should start to look at the project, and having too many ideas of what the project should be. So if there's not enough ideas, we are kind of struggling to understand what's important to communicate in the project. What the architect thinks it's the most important part of the project, what he wants to communicate to his client. And if we have too many constraints, we don't have enough freedom to explore other perspectives or other moods or other references that could really work.
I don't know if we answered, Elder.
No, obviously you did. Yes. No. Perfect. Well, I don't know if somebody has now, if they feel more motivated to share some of their doubts or their. No.
I have a question, okay, but I will make it in Portuguese and then you translate Elder, please. Uma coisa que me surpreendeu foi há pouco quando vocês apresentaram aquele segundo trabalho, e que no fundo, tanto quanto percebi, o acompanharam em desenvolvimento. Portanto, à medida que a arquitetura se ia desenvolvendo, vocês também iriam desenvolvendo o vosso trabalho. E a minha pergunta é a seguinte: nessa relação, portanto, nesse trabalho conjunto, numa mesma linha de tempo, vocês sentiram que, no fundo, a vossa criação de imagens influenciou de alguma forma as soluções arquitetónicas, ou o resultado arquitetónico, ou as soluções que foram sendo perseguidas?
I don't know if Elder wants to translate.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so. Just answer.
Yeah. What we feel during these years, it's that the most part of the times when we extrude the 3D, the client always changes the project when he first see the 3D model. So we find that interesting that somehow our images always change somehow. Some detail on the project, something in the project, but this project specifically, yes, they were playing with the proportion of the building and playing with the interior and the materials. This was it's also a very special client, a client that we are very comfortable to work with, since we work for a long time with them, and they really have this flexibility to let us do whatever we want. And I don't believe if we didn't have this flexibility, I don't believe that this could be possible to work at the same time that the architects were developing their project. Because if they were developing the project and we were somehow restricted with this with the development of this timeline, probably the project delayed too much. So they were very flexible and very open to our ideas, and we also, of course, we try to incorporate their comments. But yeah, I think it helped us somehow to develop the project.
Yeah, it was a both way collaboration.
Yeah. Yes.
Seems that, well, I don't know if anybody has any issues, but nobody's raising their hand or closing. Just to close our conversation, I'll just have one last maybe issue we could talk about, would be about the references. It's very interesting, the references, the crossover that I know you already did, because obviously we know each other well, using all these different complementary artistic intakes. My question would be, do you think, for example, contrary to architecture, where the simple copy is not something that is, it can be a learning process, but should not be a final result. So a copy is more like a tool, and actually it's more a means than an end, no? In architecture. But when you shoot some of the images, be it Blade Runner, be it Space 2001, whatever, it seems like suddenly, do you feel that there are certain commissions that you could actually use, crave directly on your reference, and then reference could help the image, or do you have to, or do you think it's very similar to architecture, where the reference should be almost like something that is forgotten and then it comes to you in a very intuitive way? Because I have always had the idea that sometimes you can play these tricks with a 3D rendering of almost, it's almost like product placement. It's more or less this kind of question. If sometimes you can play with this product placement, imagine the tractor, I do not feel, but imagine if the tractor would have been from the David Lynch film, maybe we could identify that tractor and say, but that is a David Lynch, and that could empower the images. I don't know if you do this kind of, or if it's a nonsense aspect, I don't know.
I think both of those situations happen where you look for references that you intentionally put there, almost like an Easter egg that, you know, it's cross-referencing to something else that it's not inside of the image, it's not related to the architecture, and it's sort of like an inside joke, something like that. And sometimes the reference is also, for example, the 2001 Odyssey and the Blade Runner. It could be not the image itself, but it could be the way the colors are used, or how they are used to communicate, or how they use the light to shape.
It's about the themes, no?
The
Saying it's about
silhouette. And so it could be strange for somebody how we get, you know, images from a movie that is futuristic or a movie that is from the space, and that can be a reference for something as mundane as a house. But yeah, that can really work, because sometimes we are doing an interior and then we say, well, this chair or that sofa, it's really flat. Well, what it needs, it's a light to shape the curvature and to give it some depth. And maybe we get some of the ideas from those movies, and we go and see how they light those characters or those interiors, and we try to understand that. Or even with the color and how they transmit the idea of a cold space, a warm space, a cozy space, loneliness, and you try to feed off that. Sometimes the references also come to you during the process. You are doing something, and someone sees something on the image that I just remembered that image that I saw from this photographer, and we go and search and we say, yeah, this is a good reference for this specific vegetation or this specific sidewalk, or the person that is crossing the street and it's telling a story about the image. And I think that's, you know, references are something that comes and goes, and sometimes they are there from the start. Sometimes they appear in the end. They are sort of like wild cards that sort of float.
Yeah. As Pedro was mentioned, what we found interesting when we are playing with references is to somehow communicate with the viewer with something that he can realize on, and somehow on a very unconscious way. So this idea of the cinema and idea of movies is, of course, not saying that the people always see the movies that we see, but this kind of language, that this kind of the photography of a movie, it's a very common thing. And this, as Pedro has mentioned, the light, the kind of shots, the kind of ideas. What we found interesting, for example, in cinema, putting the cinema on these 3D images, is that we hope that the final viewer can somehow, on an unconscious way, to get an emotion, because somehow it reminds him a movie or something that he saw in the past, and somehow telling a story, telling a Easter egg. Sometimes it's a joke for us, of course, as you were saying, the David Lynch tractor or something like that. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, if nobody has any questions or any comments they want to get together with us with some comments, no? So I will thank once again Hugo and Pedro for their very interesting lecture and understanding of this Cumplicities, of our Cumplicities theme. And clearly, once again, the truthfulness and the being genuine in the way they work, and be it with the client, be it with the project they are using, or the idea, the artistic idea they are pursuing. So thank you once again, Pedro, Hugo.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the session today, contrary to what is norm, would be Sylvia. So I would just say that we are going to have this Saturday the closing, or the final piece that is going to be placed inside the exhibition, would be the piece linked to the station Time, in Portuguese Tempo. That is a performance done by Hugo and Nuno Souza. It's a very interesting piece. We already did some preview the previous Sunday. We did a streaming on Instagram just to wink a little eye, open the appetite, so people can feel, it's like a little teaser we did. So we hope you can join us on Instagram on Saturday on our site, F-Poetic site. You'll find the link, and join us in celebrating this last piece we are going to collect inside the exhibition, where we think very soon it will be again open to the public, and you are able to see the exhibition that is there. and also these new pieces that Marta and Nuno and Hugo are going to submit and complete in the exhibition. So thank you all, and hope to see you or share with you this performance on Saturday in Casa das Artes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Thank you.
Ciao, Hugo.